What does it mean to be human? Hey everyone, Pastor Mike here. This is recording a message for our people joining us, especially around Northern Southland. Unfortunately, we can't meet all together because of the red light system we're under, but I hope this is a blessing to you. If you haven't read Genesis 1, verses 26 to chapter 2, verse 3, I'd encourage you to pause and do that now. But if you've read it, it's great. So it's Waitangi weekend, and on that day we remember the journey of Māori and Pākehā in this land and the treaty that joined us together. What Genesis reminds us of is what we have in common. There's a well-known Māori saying that goes, He aha te mea nui o te ao. What is the most important thing in the world? He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It is people, it is people, it is people. So what is the most important thing that God created? It is people, it is people, it is people. In day 6, God creates people. And on day 7, he rests. So let's look at verse 26. Then God said, Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. The first part, let us make our. Notice that God uses plural pronouns, us and our. God is a Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so all of the Trinity, all of God, is involved in creating us. And see that God makes mankind. Now the Hebrew there is Adam. God makes Adam. Adam means mankind or humanity. This is in the plural. It's not just Adam, not just the first man, but humanity as a whole. How does he make us? In his image, or in our image, in our likeness. That's how he makes us. Well, what does this mean? What does it mean to be made in the image of God? You might think about images that you have around the house, images of things that represent things or represent people. In New Zealand, we used to have images of the Queen in our sitting rooms or living rooms. This wasn't idolatry. It just reminded people they were part of the British Empire. In the ancient world, people used to, once a kingdom had conquered another kingdom, they would install images of the king or of their gods to show that they kind of had dominion. And so what God does is he creates these people who are image bearers, these creatures who bear his image, puts them in his creation. So this means a couple of things. Firstly, we're created beings. We are not divine. We're not gods. But on the other hand, we have this unique identity, this unique value, this unique human dignity. This is a gift that God gives us. Of course, we can look at humans from other angles too, but one of the unique things that we discover from the Bible is that we are made in the image of our Creator. And that's something for everyone. Everyone is made in God's image. Even your worst enemy is made in God's image, and so they have value as well. Look at look at the next part. It's so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. We see here that God gives us a role, doesn't he? And it's to rule. Does this mean we can do whatever we want? Well, of course not. We are still under God's command, under God's authority. But within God's authority, we've been given authority to have dominion over this creation. To exercise that authority with the wisdom that God gives us. We're to exercise this rule wisely and according to God's design with care. And so this is something that we can all do at some level. And obviously, if you're a farmer, you'll have a particular responsibility for your animals and for the land. But all humans have this kind of responsibility. In verse 27, we see God creates humankind in his own image. So it's the act of creation. But note the extra detail there. He created them, male and female, he created them. So note that included within our humanity is our gender. He makes us either male or female. And so that's really good. Basically, God gives us our gender. This is part of God's design for us. Now, this is not just to say this endorses some kind of stereotype of what it means to be a man or a woman, just that it's good to be a man or a woman. This kind of leads into marriage and things like that. but this is part of God's design for creation. So this is a gift to us. And the next gift we see after the command to be fruitful and to exercise that rule, the next gift is of food and nourishment. God gives us seed-bearing plants for food, and in verse 30 onwards, God gives the beasts of the earth plants for food. God gives us food, and obviously as you read through Genesis, he expands that to also giving humans animals for food as well. But we see that what God does is a little bit different, actually. In the ancient world, they believed that the role of humans was to create food for God, to feed God, as it were. We were like God's slaves in that sense. Well, here we see God is serving us. God is giving us what we need. He's giving us the food to nourish us. So we see we're given dignity, we're given value, we are given gender, we are given the gift of food. And God steps back in verse 31 and says it was very good, and that was the sixth day. And so on the sixth day, it's all finished. But notice that there's one more day, and we want to move on to the seventh day. And here, notice that it moves on from looking at us to looking back at God. It doesn't finish with us, but the week finishes by looking at God. On the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creation that he had done. So on the seventh day, God stops and looks back, and he rests, he delights in, he enjoys his work. So this is obviously a good thing. The seventh day is God's, it's God's gift to himself, and God has finished his work. Where we, get up in the morning, and God has already been up. Before we've had our first cup of coffee, God has already finished his work. He's finished it. It's been done, and he sits back and he blesses that day. And God is gracious, and he gives this as a gift to his people. So eventually this would become the Sabbath that God would bless the people of Israel with, a day of rest for them, to remind them that they were made in his image, made to be his image bearers, made to be his people. But ultimately, this points forward to the gift of rest that God has given us in Jesus. In Jesus Christ, he has made a way of salvation. God has done what is required for us to know him, to be saved. He sent the perfect image bearer, Jesus, who on the cross carved out our salvation for us. On the cross, he declared it was finished. And by his resurrection, we are given new life. And so we are called to put our rest, to put our trust in Jesus. And so we enter ultimately into the rest that God has for us. And so, friends, those are some reflections on these verses from Genesis. I pray that would be encouraging to you. Pray that God would bless you today and God would be with you, and hopefully can catch up soon. Ka kite.